Hosea was a prophet
Hello.
who was told by God to marry a harlot named Gomer.
Hello.
At first, their marriage was lovely and productive. But soon, Hosea became distracted by work, and Gomer became distracted by other things.
Hello.
And before long, Gomer bore another son, which looked suspiciously like the mailman.
Wait a minute.
Find out what Hosea did next this week in Once Upon a Marriage.
Good morning. How's everybody doing today? Hey, my name is Perry, and I am one of the pastors here at Ignite, and I'm just so honored to be here again today. I was a bit surprised that Pastor Mike would ask me to wrap up this relationship series, because if any of you know me, you know that I am not the picture-perfect husband. I do a lot of things wrong, but hopefully that's given me some experience to maybe speak into some lives today. My wife, Alicia, and I actually started dating in 2002, so roughly 17 years ago, and we've been married this April will be 10 years. So it took me 7 years approximately to decide that I could put up with all 20 levels of her craziness. And if you know her, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I would love to share some stories, but one, we don't have time for that, and two, I would like to remain married after this series is over. So we'll leave that for later times. But all joking aside, it's been a long journey. It's been one that's had a lot of ups and downs. We've had our mountain peaks and our valleys, like any relationship. But I truly believe that God started preparing a message like this in my heart about year 2 or 3 in our marriage, and we'll get more into that later. But I truly believe that we're living in a throwaway society. Everything we have is cheaper to throw away and replace than it is to fix. And I feel that has spilled over into our relationships. It's easier to go find a new friend or find a new husband, a new wife, than it is to actually put in the work that it takes to maintain a relationship. You know, and really, it's because of the society that we live in to where dating people are now doing what used to be reserved for married people. You know, the difference between dating and marriage is often now just a little ceremony that really doesn't mean a whole lot to the people that are there because they've been practicing dating or practicing marriage their whole time while they was dating. They're doing little things like they're saying, "I love you." That's something you didn't say really early on in a relationship, and we see that being used more and more freely as that word has lost its meaning and its value to a lot of people. They're giving their hearts away. They're doing physical things. They're spending the night in bed with each other. They're sharing a bathroom and a toothbrush, and they're living together, and so on. So people basically, while they're dating, are playing house. They're playing marriage. They're pretending to be married, and they're doing all these things that used to be reserved for the sacred marriage. So it's no wonder that when things get tough, things get hard, instead of trying to fix that relationship, it's so much easier for them just to take their toothbrush and their broken heart and move on down the road to the next relationship. And you know, after you've done that 2 times, 4 times, 10 times, 22 times, however many times you've done that in your life, you know, you just keep taking your toothbrush and going to the next and to the next and to the next. And that's why it's so easy now when you're married, when you come across a problem or a situation in your marriage, instead of trying to pour into that and fixing it, it's easier just to move on, get a divorce and move on. So many of you here are either married or one day will be married, and you're going to encounter some bumps in the road. And the normal logic in today's society is, it's tough. Take your toothbrush and go somewhere else. Find somebody else to try to pretend to do life with. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look into a biblical story that really pours into this. And it's a beautiful, beautiful story, but at the same time, it's full of pain. And so we're going to look into this, and we're going to really see that while God says every time you think you have a reason, you have the right, you've been hurt enough, this person's betrayed you, and you have every right to walk out the door, take your toothbrush and go home, he's saying, no, there's so much more. You got to dig deeper. So we're going to take a look at this awesome couple in the Bible. And again, we don't make these names up. The man is Hosea, and the wife is Gomer. And we've learned the last few weeks that they really didn't know how to name ladies back in the day. It would be hard to pick up a lady named Gomer. I just don't know how you would do that with a straight face. But we're going to see that this marriage had every reason to end in divorce. The things that we're going to see that occurred in this marriage, most of us would have walked away early on in this thing. But we're going to see how God calls these people to something different. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a background before we get into the story. And we're going to start about 760 years before the birth of Christ. We're in the northern kingdom of Israel, and their king currently is Jeroboam. I studied these names last night. I'm not promising I got them right. I'm hoping I did. But anyway, they're currently enjoying unprecedented success. Kingdom business is super good. Profits are up. Jeroboam doesn't know what to do with all this newfound success. And the problem with that is anytime we find ourselves in a situation where there's economic increase, we often find that the flip side of that is really a spiritual and moral decrease. Because people kind of tend to lose what they're hanging on to. They tend to think, okay, well, we've got this. We don't really need God right now. We're just going to enjoy the fruit that we have. And they're not worried about the future. So that's where we find ourselves currently. So not only are the profits up and the level of sin is up, but many are idolizing other gods. And we find that the one true God, he's not real happy about this at all. And in the Old Testament, they say that God is a jealous God. And we're going to see that as we dig deeper into this story. So we're going to enter in today our main character, Hosea. In Hosea chapter 1, verse 2 through 3, reads, "When the Lord began to speak through Hosea, the Lord said to him, 'Go marry a promiscuous woman and have children with her. For like an adulterous wife, this land is guilty of unfaithfulness to the Lord.' So he married Gomer, daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son." So somebody in here is like me and is thinking, man, that's messed up. You raise up a prophet to do your work, and you tell him he needs to go marry basically a prostitute. Go find yourself a woman that you know is not going to be faithful to you, that's living this bad life, and marry her. But it's like every story in the Bible that really carries a lot of value. You got to be willing to peel back the layers, because there's so many layers to that, and you got to peel them back one at a time to get to the true heart of the story. As we work through this story, we're going to see that the first layer is literally just the story of Hosea and immoral Gomer. And then as we peel back the next layer, we will see a picture of God. Just as Hosea is loving this immoral woman, God is loving the immoral people of Israel. And then another layer is peeled back away, and we see God who is loving us as we continue to reject him. So throughout the whole story, there's layers upon layers of meaning buried in this disturbing but yet beautiful marriage. So make this a little bit easier, I thought it'd be fun to do like a Hosea and Gomer 2019. Make it a little easier for everybody to understand and kind of maybe relate to it. So we got this pretty straight-laced guy, Hosea. He's new into the ministry, just got his first preaching gig. You know, he's truly on fire for God, and he's got this idea in his head that he's going to set the world on fire, and he's going to save the world one soul at a time. And one day he's out in his city, and he's doing a prayer walk around his city, and he does this often. He's praying for the people in his community and the churches in the community, and just praying that God really brings his community to life. And he runs across this lady, the lady of the night. We'll call her Gomer for whatever reason. And he doesn't think much of it that night. He sees her as he does his prayer walks, and he knows her. Everybody in town knows Gomer. But he just keeps on walking and praying. Doesn't think much of it until later that night, he's asleep, and God comes to him as he's asleep, and he has this dream, and God's telling him, you need to go find Gomer, and you need to marry her. You know, he probably wakes up the next morning thinking, man, I had some bad fish last night, not feeling real good. That had to be because of that bad food. I don't know that that's true. But after a while, he realizes, you know, man, God really put that on me. He put that in my dream. He's telling me I need to do this. So if God's leading me there, I've got to follow. I got to do this because it's going to be good. So he sets out to find Gomer the next day, and he finally finds her after she finishes her long shift. And she's probably tired and wore out, just wants to go home and go to bed. And here comes crazy Hosea saying, hey, I'm going to marry you. She's probably a little freaked out at first, but, so they decide to date. They go on a few dates. She's just excited that, hey, this guy's really into me. He's not after that one thing everybody else has been wanting from me. So I'm going to give this a shot, So they date a little bit. They both realize this truly is from God. This is what God wants us to do. And she's excited to maybe turn over this new leaf in her life and start down a new journey with Hosea. So they get married, and they decide to go to Hawaii for their honeymoon. And they probably do what every newlyweds do. They spend all week No, I'm just kidding. They're on the beach all week. You sick people. We're in church. We got to behave. No, but they do practice having kids, and they finally do conceive, and they're excited. Everybody's happy in this period in their time. So first they go to the doctor, and they find out indeed they are having a son, and they're super excited. The next task, obviously, if any of you have children, is naming the child, and we all know how fun that can be. But Hosea is coming at it with like, hold on, I'm not naming my child after any of your ex-boyfriends, so we're going to have to work this out. So they spend a lot of time, unfortunately, trying to name this child. They get to the letter J in the alphabet before they finally land on one. Let's see, in the alphabet, Jezreel at this point is what they landed on. Again, there is meaning behind that name. If you want to dig into that a little bit more, you can. But that's the name they finally landed on. It took them half the alphabet, but they got there. So they land on Jezreel, and that's the name. So now the final thing is they got to paint the room. They get the room painted, and then she's starting into labor. She's ready, and that baby boy is coming. So then it's that day. The baby boy is born, and he's happy. He's healthy. Everybody in that moment is happy and healthy. This life's perfect. Nothing's going to happen. We got this perfect family, and God's on our side, and we're ready to set sail down this adventure called life. So anyway, what happens a lot of times when we're on those mountain peaks, we want to enjoy them, but in the back of our mind, we know what's coming next. We've done enough life that we know that after that mountain peak is normally a quick and swift fall back down to the valley floor. So what we see in their story is exactly that. Life happens and sends their marriage off into a different direction. So his ministry's taken off. He's spending more and more time at the church. And she's growing more and more resentful towards him because of that. He's at the church. She's trying to deal with this newborn baby. And we all know babies can be fun. We've got one that's 8 months old that learned how to scream. So 3 days straight, all we've heard are screams. So she's starting to let herself go a little bit. She's not happy. She has self-esteem issues. She's trying to deal with her post-pregnancy body. She's just feeling trapped. And he's feeling neglected. She's not paying any attention to his needs because she's not and he's not, and they're just not doing well. So then one day something happens and changes the landscape to their marriage. An old boyfriend, one of many, slides into Gomer's DMs, and all of a sudden, all these strange feelings come pouring back to her. She's been feeling neglected. Nobody wants her. Her own husband's, just too busy at work to even pay her any attention. All of a sudden, somebody creeps in the back door and starts saying nice things to her, and it's all over from there. So she starts going to the gym again. She's going to lose that weight. She's not going to do it for her husband. She's going to do it for this other guy who's been hitting her up. She loses that weight. She gets herself a new haircut. She gets her mojo back, and boy, is she working at every angle she can. She went back to work part-time, and she's dressing a little less business casual and a little bit more black tie event. She's ordering a ton of stuff off Amazon because she has a thing for the mailman, as we saw in that video. He's a good-looking dude. And she starts to believe the most common marriage misconception. What I'm missing is better than what I have. What I'm missing is better than what I have. If you're following along in your talk notes, you can fill that out in there or on your phone. We'll call this the 80-20 swap. Gomer starts thinking, Hosea offers me so much, but there's these few things over here that he's not providing for me. She does what most people do and have done for centuries. She takes that 80% that he's giving her, and she trades it in for the 20% that this other man is offering her. You're probably asking yourself, what in the world is this guy talking about? Well, in a decent marriage, a person can only really provide and meet about 80% of your needs and expectations. If you ever get into a relationship and you're expecting this other person to provide 100% of your needs and expectations, you're setting that person up for failure and that relationship up for failure. You cannot trade the 80 for the 20. So this guy's, so she doesn't have the 20%, and she takes the 80%, trades it for the 20%, and ends up with far less than she had in the first place. Not real sure. It doesn't really say what 20% this other guy is offering Gomer. Maybe he's, Hosea is busy and distracted at work, so this guy's just paying her a little bit of attention. He comes along and he's listening to her. He's complimenting her. He's buying her little gifts, telling her how special she is. Just all those little things that after a few years of marriage tend to get pushed to the back burner because you just assume that they know those things. I don't have to continue to tell her how much she means to me. I don't have to tell her how much I appreciate everything she does on a day-to-day basis because she already knows that. I told her that 10 years ago. Why do I need to keep repeating myself? But this other guy comes along and he's more than happy to do it. He knows Gomer's past and he knows it ain't going to take much to get her to trip up a little bit and be able to get away with some stuff. So they believe in the lie. And what I'm missing is better than what I have. So there's just a few things I want to hit on real quick about the 80-20 trade. And I'm sure you've all heard these before. But if it looks better somewhere else, let's start at number one there. If the grass is greener on the other side, it's time to water your own. We've all heard that. It's time to take care of your yard and not worry about everybody else's yards. If it looks better somewhere else, most likely that's because you're far enough away from that yard to smell the poop in it. And what is missing is not better than what you have if you're willing to invest in what you have. That's the key. You have to be willing to invest in it. If you're not willing to invest in it, then why is your partner? Why are we even here? Why are we doing this thing called marriage? So Gomer goes out and she trades the 80 for the 20, thinking she's going to be better off. She's going to get that 20% she's been missing, not realizing that she's going to lose the 80 she had. She hooks up with several other men and actually ends up having more children. She first has a daughter and names her Lo-Ruhamah, which means unpitied, unloved, or not loved by the true father. She later gives birth to another son and names him Lo-Ammi, which means no kin of mine, not related to me. So as you're reading this story, this is the part where it goes deeper than just the story. You can really start to hear the pain and God's voice as he's relating this to what the Israelites are doing and how he feels at that time. You know, he's angry and he's hurt. Most of all, he's jealous. And we've all been there. We've all been jealous. Jealousy is one of those feelings that can really just uproot somebody and cause them to do some dumb things. But he's God and he wants all our hearts 100%. He's the only one that can fill our needs 100%. And he will take nothing less than 100% of our hearts. He's not a used car salesman, and he is not willing to negotiate. So if we shift our focus just for a minute here off of the marriage and into God's heart, we see that he has two responses to spiritual adultery, because that's the second layer to this. And quite honestly, there are some here today, maybe not in this physical room, but maybe watching or listening online, some that are sinning grievously against God. And this is how those sins make God feel. His first response is righteous anger. In Hosea chapter 2, verses 8 through 10, we read that she has not acknowledged that I was the one who gave her the grain, the new wine and oil, who lavished her on the silver and gold, which they used for Baal. He's basically at that point saying, so you don't acknowledge where all these things, all these blessings came from. You won't acknowledge that they came from me, but you're going to use them to worship another god. So that angers God. He's very angry. He's jealous because they're shifting their focus off of him, who's blessed them with all this stuff, and worshiping somebody else. So he says, therefore I will take away my grain when it ripens, and my new wine when it is ready. I will take back my wool and my linen, intended to cover her naked body. So now I will expose her lewdness before the eyes of her lovers. No one will take her out of my hand. You got to listen to that. No one will take her out of my hand. This is where you see the true hurt and the jealousy start to come out of God, and you see him saying things like, you know what, fine. You want to do life without me? Go ahead, rock on, do your thing. You want to worship other idols? Good luck. Let's see how long that lasts. And then he does the same in our marriages. You don't want me at the center of your marriage? That's fine. Don't come crying to me at year 2 or 3 when things are falling apart. Just don't. I'm not in it. You want to do marriage without my word or my presence? You want to see how that goes? Try it. I'll step back and let you do your thing. But that's the way many people are living today. But I really love his statement. There's a sense of possessiveness when he says that. When he says, ain't nobody going to take her from me. You can't take from me what is mine. He feels the same way about each one of us and our marriages. And if you're not married yet, your future marriage. He already has that planned out. And he's already holding that in his hands. And he's already saying, No one's going to take this out of my hands. So we'll shift back to marriage for a minute. And if you've ever found yourself in this situation, maybe you've been betrayed, there's been an affair, something that's tore up your marriage, and you're angry, and you have that right to be angry. God says it's okay to have a righteous anger. And you can be upset, and you can come at it as, man, we stood on that altar, and we made a commitment to each other, and we did that before God. We vowed that we would only love one another, and that together we would be one forever. And you can have that. That's not an unrighteous anger. You have that right to be angry. The problem is sometimes we take that righteous anger and it slowly but quickly transitions to unrighteous anger. And so what we can't do in that moment of unrighteous anger is we can't use that sin, that mistake against them. We have the right to be angry, but we can't continue to throw that in our spouse's face. We can't continue to browbeat them and use that as a get-out-of-jail-free card. Well, you did this. Yeah, well, I did that because you did this. Two wrongs will never make a right. But most likely, if you truly are giving that person the best 80%, and I say the best, you can't pick and choose what 80% you want to give them. You got to give them your best 80%. And if you're doing that, that situation may have been avoided. I'm not going to say it would have been. But there's a chance that if you were truly pouring in that 80% and your best 80%, that your spouse would have had no business going off and doing what they did. Or you can come at it with God's possessiveness, and you can say, you know what, Satan? You're not stealing my marriage. I will not roll over and go away. I've seen too many people do it before, and I'm not one of them. I don't care who you put in my way. I don't care what you have or where they come from. I made a promise, and my word is all I have. You can come at me with everything you have, Satan, but I have all I need to beat you and to save my marriage. I put God at the center of this, and he has already claimed victory. You got to come at it. Too many times we get in this mindset that if we're just quiet little sheep, we just through life, that Satan's not going to come at us. Bull crap. Satan's going to come at us. So come back at Satan with the ferocity. Come back at Satan as a lion and say, you better pack a lunch, Satan. You don't got this. I will not be beat. My marriage will not be beat. I may only have 80% of what she needs, but my God has the remaining 20%. You will not take her out of my hands. You've got to have that ferocity when it comes to saving a marriage, because it's too easy for people to walk away from something that's so good and God has such good plans for it. And you just get hurt one time and it's so easy to take your toothbrush and go home. You got to look Satan in the eyes and say, you will not take this from me. So now let's look how quick, though, he switches from that righteous anger to his other response of unfailing love. In Hosea 2, 14 through 15, he says, therefore, I am going to allure her. Listen, guys, listen to this next part. It is absolutely amazing. I'm going to allure her, and I will lead her into the most dry place where there's nothing else for her to depend on but me. I will take her away from all the sin and the temptation. I will get her alone, and I will take her back to a place where we must rely on one another. And he says, I will lead her into the desert and speak tenderly to her. There I will give her back her vineyards and will make the valley of Achor a door of hope. The word Achor in the Bible literally translates to the word trouble. So God is saying he will make the valley of trouble into a door of hope. There's basically only two ways we can have a good marriage that survives. Number one, it's simple. We just got to do everything right. We got to be perfect. No room for mistakes. We can't sin. That should be easy enough for us, right? No problems there. When that doesn't work out, you got to fall back on option two. And you got to be willing to walk through the valley of Achor, the valley of trouble, together, until you find the door of hope. You're going to mess up. You're going to hurt each other. You're going to do cruel things to each other. You're going to say cruel things to each other. You're going to rebel against each other. You're going to reject one another. You're going to repent at some point, and you're going to turn back to God. And in doing so, you're going to cry together with your spouse. You're going to hug her. You're going to apologize. And you together are going to conform your hearts and minds to be more like God. The issue is most of us don't travel through the Valley of Achor just once. Maybe we visit it for several different reasons, but not too much life goes on and we find ourselves right back there repeating the same process. Some of the best and longest marriages I know are marriages that walk through the valley of betrayal. They crawled through the valley of adultery, and they ran laps through the valley of pornography. They tripped through the valley of rejection, and they walked through the valley of deceit. They walked through all of that, and they walked through it together with God in the center, leading them. And they continued to walk through that valley until they found their door of hope. Maybe there's some here today that are married, and you've just given up. You've lost hope. You don't see a reason to continue on. I want you to listen to this. If you continue to pursue God, you will always walk through the valley of Achor, and you'll always find that door of hope. It's there. Don't know where it's at. Some people may walk short distances, other people may have to walk for a long time, but it's there. The challenge we get into, though, is that sometimes when you're in that situation, your spouse doesn't want to walk with you. And it's too easy at that point to kind of shift the blame on them and say, hey, I'm trying, but they don't want to walk with me. So I'm just done. You have to keep the course. You have to walk that path alone if that's what it takes, with your hand held out and open, waiting for that spouse to reach out to you. And they'll reach out to you when they're ready. But you cannot let go of God. You cannot let go of God, because when you let go of God, you get lost in the valley. So I knew this message was going to be tough. I know it would hit some people in the gut. And I knew it wasn't going to be a real feel-good message. Like a lot of people, some people want to come to church and hear the feel-good stuff and go home feeling good and ready to come back for next week. And I wish that was the end of it. But it's not. It's not over yet, and it's not going to get any easier. Because God's about to say the most amazing thing to this man, Hosea, who's been betrayed, nothing but betrayed and betrayed and betrayed, and he's been nothing but faithful this whole time to this woman. And he's just trudging through, but God's about to say something that's going to rock his world. In Hosea chapter 3, verse 1, he says, "The Lord said to me, go show your love to your wife again. Though she is loved by another man and is an adulteress, love her as the Lord loves you." Or love her as the Lord loves the Israelites, though they turn to other gods. So my next point there is forgive and love as you have been forgiven and loved. Forgive and love as you have been forgiven and loved. So God tells Hosea to love and forgive Gomer. Love and forgive this woman who left you and slept with several other men and bore their children. Love and forgive the woman who is now back to prostituting herself. That's crazy. I think if that was me, I'm Hosea, and I'm like, man, I'm out, God. I'm done doing that. She's hurt me time and time again. I will no longer walk in this valley of Achor with my hand out to her. We're done. I'm taking my toothbrush and my shattered heart, and I'm moving on. But Hosea doesn't. Instead, he does something incredible. He takes all his hard-earned money that he's got saved up. He's been working hard in those fields and building his ministry. And he's got a little bit of a nest egg built up, and he takes it all. And he finds Gomer's pimp. And he throws the money in the pimp's face, and he says, she's free from your control and your bondage. She's free to live her life now, free to make her own choices. She is no longer a slave. She's a slave to none. Guys, this is precisely what Christ did for us. While we were still out prostituting ourselves against God, while we were all still sinners, Christ died for the ungodly. He shed his blood to purchase us back so we could truly know his love. It's just incredible. In Hosea 10, verse 12, it says, sow righteousness for yourselves, reap the fruit of unfailing love, and break up the unplowed ground. For it is time to seek the Lord until he comes and showers his righteousness on you. This story of Hosea and Gomer the pain, the tears, the betrayal. It's all so real for Alicia and I. You see, we walked a very, hauntingly very similar path. I was so wrapped up in my work. I was out doing stuff on the side for the church. I thought saving the world was more important than my little marriage. Little did I know that by doing that, I unlocked the door to our marriage. And I let Satan creep in. He came in that back door so fast, and he dug his claws in, and he took our marriage, and we went to the Valley of Achor. I had a choice to make at that point. And I was filled with both righteous and unrighteous anger. I was done. Didn't feel I had done anything wrong. Didn't do anything to deserve what had happened. But luckily for me, like Hosea had God speaking to him, I had a pastor in my life at that point, and he wasn't going to let me quit. And he said to me, he read me Hosea 3:1, and he said, you have to love her the way the Lord loves you, and you have to forgive her as the Lord forgives you. I couldn't do it. My unrighteous anger was off the chart at this point. I was simply done. Didn't care what anybody had to say. And at that point, you know, he made a simple statement. And he said, how can you deny her your forgiveness when you so easily accept the forgiveness God gives to you? A statement that rocked my world and has changed the way I look at forgiveness every day I move forward from there. But a statement that saved our marriage. You know, we've been back to the Valley of Achor a few times since then. You go for stupid things, guys, financial stuff, all these little things that really in the big picture don't matter, but we find ourselves getting drugged there by those things. But every time we're there, we remind ourselves, you didn't get us last time, Satan. You ain't getting us this time. You will not take our marriage out of God's hands. You will not. We attack our marriage every day with that ferocity and that lion-like drive. We're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to continue to hurt each other and say mean things. That's just part of life. But we're walking hand in hand through the Valley of Achor. And we're going to find our door of hope. Marriage is a constant journey through the valley bottoms and the mountain peaks. And if you truly want to enjoy the mountain peaks, you must be willing to walk through the Valley of Achor holding tight to both you, to both your spouse, and to God. Let me pray for you guys.